There's a strange silence that lives inside hospitals. It's not the absence of sound. No, there's always noise. Beeping monitors, footsteps in hallways, voices behind curtains. But it's something else. A quiet that wraps itself around your chest. A silence made of pressure, expectation, of everything you're supposed to be but haven't quite become yet. I've lived in that silence for 3 years. My name is Miyuki. I'm a resident at one of the most prestigious hospitals in Seoul. I've spent the last few years running through corridors with barely enough sleep to remember my own name. I've had coffee for dinner, skipped birthdays, and missed calls from my mother for weeks. My entire life fits into 3 things: work, exhaustion, and this gnawing feeling that I'm still not enough. You see, in medicine, there's always someone better, faster, smarter, someone who's seen more, saved more, achieved more. I thought if I just worked harder, gave everything, I'd get there too. That one day, someone would look at me and say, "You're ready." But no one ever says that. Every morning, I wake up before the sun, tie my hair back, check my notes, rehearse names and diagnoses in my head like prayers. I tell myself I'm doing this for my future, for the patients, for the honor of wearing this white coat. But sometimes it just feels like survival. I don't complain. That's not allowed here. We're trained to function like machines. Precise, emotionless, tireless. I became very good at pretending, at keeping my voice steady while delivering bad news, at nodding along while senior doctors criticized me in front of others, at holding back tears in supply closets when everything felt too heavy. Then I met him. His name was Gu, room 709. Terminal diagnosis, stage 4, no chance of reversal. I was told he had only a few months, maybe less. My task was simple: monitor vitals, administer medications, update charts, stay detached, do the work, don't get involved. But Gu made that impossible. The first time I walked into his room, I expected the usual: exhaustion, fear, silence. But instead he was sitting cross-legged on the bed, peeling an orange, humming some old love song under his breath. He looked up, smiled like we were old friends, and said, "You're the serious one, aren't you?" I blinked. "Excuse me? You walked in like you were entering battle," he said. "Is it that bad to see me?" I stared at him, unsure how to respond. Most patients didn't joke, not when they were told the end was near. "I'm Dr. Miyuki," I said, composing myself. "I'll be assisting with your care." He tilted his head, studying me. "You don't look like a Miyuki." "I don't know what that means." "That's a compliment. You look like someone who should be painting or dancing or laughing, not buried in charts." I didn't answer. I didn't know how. He offered me a slice of his orange. I declined. Over the next few days, I visited him often, partly because it was my duty, but partly because I was curious. He never acted like a man who was dying. He cracked jokes with the nurses, asked philosophical questions about the afterlife, tried to guess people's zodiac signs. He called his IV pole George and asked if we could give it a name tag. George gets jealous when I talk to other people. He'd whisper dramatically, and the nurses would laugh. But what struck me most was the way he looked at life, or rather at death. "I'm not scared," he told me once, as I checked his heart rate. "I'm just sad I won't get to see how the story ends." "What story?" I asked. "Life," he said. "All the stories other people are still living. Yours too." I didn't know what to say to that. No one had ever cared about my story before. Not in here. Not like that. He asked me questions I didn't expect. "What did you want to be before you chose medicine?" I told him I didn't remember. He didn't believe me. "Everyone remembers," he said. "You just buried it." One day, I came in and found him sketching something in a notebook. "You draw?" "Badly," he said. "But I try. Today I tried to draw you." I froze. He held up the page. It was rough, abstract, but there was something unmistakably familiar about it. The tired eyes, the tight bun, the shoulders that never fully relaxed. "I think I captured your exhaustion quite well," he joked. I smiled despite myself. "I've never met anyone like you," I said. "I get that a lot," he replied with a grin. But later that night, alone in the break room, I stared at that sketch in my mind. And for the first time in a long while, I cried. Not because I was overwhelmed, not because of failure or fatigue, but because someone saw me, really saw me, not just the doctor, not the resident, not the efficient machine the hospital expected, just Miyuki. And I didn't know what to do with that. I started visiting Gu even when it wasn't technically required. I told myself it was part of my rounds, that I was being thorough. But the truth was, I needed those moments, more than I expected. In a place where everything felt clinical and measured, being in his room felt like stepping into a space where I could breathe. He always greeted me like I was bringing good news. "Ah, Dr. Miyuki, my favorite overly serious person. What dark cloud are you carrying today?" I never knew how to respond to that, and maybe that's why I kept coming back. He challenged me without accusing, saw through me without judgment. One afternoon, I brought him a book of poetry. I wasn't sure why. I had found it in a dusty corner of my apartment, something I used to read when I was younger, before school, before everything became so heavy. He smiled when I handed it to him. "You read poetry?" "I used to," I said. "Back when I had time to feel things." He opened to a random page and read aloud without hesitation. His voice was calm, rich, almost reverent. Then he looked up at me. "This poem is about letting go." I nodded. "You're not very good at that, are you?" I shrugged. "You don't get far in this place by letting go." He tilted his head. "Or maybe you don't get far inside yourself by holding on." I didn't say anything, but that sentence stayed with me for days. Over time, he started sharing more. little things. Stories from his childhood, how he used to climb trees and fall out of them just to see how far he could fall without breaking. He talked about his mother's cooking, his father's silence, the first girl he ever loved, and the one who broke his heart. I listened, not as a doctor, not even as a woman, just as a human being, one who had forgotten what it felt like to connect with someone beyond duty and responsibility. One rainy evening, I was alone in the break room when I found myself sketching something on a napkin. A shape, a face, nothing impressive, but it was freeing. I hadn't drawn in years. I had almost forgotten I used to love it. When I visited Gu the next day, I told him, "You see," he said, "you're starting to remember who you were." Or maybe I'm just losing focus, I replied. Maybe focus isn't everything. He paused, then asked, "Can I show you something?" He reached under his pillow and pulled out a folded paper. It was a letter. He handed it to me, still folded. "What is it?" "Read it when I'm gone." I looked at him, startled. "Don't say that. It's not a curse, Miyuki. It's just part of the plan." I didn't take it, not yet. "I'm not ready to talk about you being gone," I whispered. "Then don't. Just sit with me." So I did. We sat in silence. No charts. No questions. Just the sound of his breath and mine. The slow rhythm of something unspoken building between us. One day I came into his room and found him asleep, hand resting on the poetry book I had given him. The page was open to a poem called The Art of Staying. I read the first lines. "Some people go before they leave. Some people leave before they're gone." Tears filled my eyes. Gu stirred and saw me. "That one hits hard, doesn't it?" I nodded. "Too hard." He looked at me for a long time, then said, "I don't want to go without knowing what your laugh sounds like." I laughed. Not because of what he said, but because it was the only thing I could do. It came out awkward at first, but real. And he smiled so wide I thought the room got brighter. "There it is," he whispered. From that day on, I allowed myself small pieces of joy. I took longer walks to the hospital. I looked up at the sky. I called my mother back. I started to feel again. But with that feeling came fear, because every day Gu was fading. His jokes became softer, his appetite weaker, his energy thinner, and I hated that I couldn't stop it. I hated that no matter how hard I worked, how many protocols I followed, I couldn't save him. One night, I stayed in his room after my shift. I sat beside him, and for the first time, I told him the truth. "I became a doctor because I thought it would make me whole," I said. "I thought if I worked hard enough, I could outrun the emptiness." He turned his head toward me. "And now? Now I think maybe being whole isn't the goal. Maybe it's just being real." He smiled. "You're already that," he said. "You just forgot." I reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. "Guh!" He closed his eyes, peaceful. "I'm still here," he said. "You don't have to say it yet." But I wanted to. I wanted to say I had fallen in love with the way he made me question everything, with the way he turned dying into living, with the way he brought me back to myself. But I stayed silent. And we stayed there, his fingers resting lightly in mine, the machines beeping gently behind us. And somewhere deep in my chest, something broke open, not in pain, but in gratitude. Because even if I couldn't save him, he had saved a part of me. I knew the end was close when Gu stopped opening his eyes in the morning. At first, it was gradual. A little more sleep, a little less conversation. The nurses said it was expected, natural. But nothing about it felt natural to me. I sat by his bed more often, even when I wasn't on shift. No one questioned it, not anymore. He no longer joked. No sketches, no poems, just quiet breathing. And sometimes when he had the strength, his hand would find mine. I held it like an anchor, as if holding him tightly could keep him here just a little longer. One afternoon, the sun broke through the windows, casting a soft light across his blanket. I brought the poetry book and the one I had given him, and read aloud. I don't remember which poem it was. I only remember the way his fingers twitched, like he was listening, like it meant something. I leaned closer. "Gu," I whispered. "You can rest. I'll remember everything for you." His lips moved, barely, a sound almost inaudible. "Miyuki," I blinked back tears. "I'm here." His eyes fluttered open, just for a second, just enough. And then, nothing. Silence. Real silence. Not the kind made of pressure, the kind made of goodbye. I sat there for hours. No one disturbed me. The machines had gone quiet. The nurses stepped softly around the room, like they, too, didn't want to interrupt something sacred. When I finally stood, I found the letter, the one he had told me about. It was tucked under his pillow, sealed with shaky handwriting. My name was written on the front. I didn't open it right away. I waited until I was home, until the city had quieted, until the grief had settled into something less sharp. Then with trembling fingers, I opened it. He had written it slowly, the lines uneven but full of him. "Miyuki, if you're reading this, I'm probably already somewhere far away, or maybe not. Maybe I'm still here. In the laugh you've learned to love again, or in the sky when it rains softly at night. I don't believe in endings. I believe in echoes. You once told me you became a doctor to feel whole, but you don't need a title to be complete. You were whole the first time I saw you. Tired, serious, and beautiful in your silence. Thank you for letting me see you. And thank you for seeing me. Don't waste too much time grieving. Life is waiting for you. And I hope someday when it rains, you'll smile and think of me. Love, Gu." I pressed the letter to my chest and cried in a way I never had before. Not in a supply closet, not behind a mask, but as a woman who had learned how to feel again. Weeks passed, then months. I returned to the hospital, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. But I was different now. I still wore the white coat, still followed protocols, still read charts and checked vitals, but I also asked people their favorite songs. I held hands when I didn't have to. I took my time. I smiled, and sometimes I laughed. Patients noticed, so did my colleagues. They said I'd changed, and I had, because one person, one dying man with a pencil and a crooked smile, had taught me more about living than any textbook ever could. One rainy morning, I stood outside the hospital, umbrella in hand, and I looked up. The sky was soft, gray, gentle, and for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Goo was gone, but he hadn't disappeared. He had become part of my story, and I had finally become part of my own. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There's a new story waiting for you every week.